Hello everyone, my name is John Bussard. I'm an HPE Business Transformation Center engineer for Ingram Micro. I help support HP servers, blade systems, storage, as well as Aruba networking technology solutions. Today we're going to explore Aruba's Access Security SSE solution, or Security Services Edge solution. So there's a lot of acronyms that are involved with this solution, so I decided to kind of spell them out. I edited this slide a little bit so we could talk to them better. So certainly things like ZTNA, or Zero Trust Network Access. That is really, when we talk about this solution, what they're talking about is the VPN style replacement, or giving access to resources and application without necessarily installing VPN software inside the environment. There's also CASB, or Cloud Access Security Broker, and this is really the solution that's wrapped around unauthorized access or movement of data, to external resources in the environment, or any place you don't necessarily want it to go. There's also SWG, or Secure Web Gateway. This secures access to the internet and protects people from malware or online threats that are out there. So overall, this really talks about the experience that has changed to our users on the network. There used to be a time where we used to kind of have a castle and moat type of architecture for protecting users on our network and the security platforms that we've used. You maybe have all the users in the office. We place bunch of security solutions around things like firewall, and we expected the applications to be in the office data center as well as the users to be in the office as well. But things have certainly changed from that aspect. Now users can be internal to the office. They could also be remote, as well as applications could be internal to the data center, or they can be up within the cloud. So really, security solutions need to change, and that's what these SSE solutions are really all about. So with all that being said, let's explore this management context. All right, so here I am up on the Access Security Cloud platform. I've already logged in, and we are on the dashboard. On the dashboard, I get a lot of useful things. Certainly, I could change the time frame that I look at things. We could see the latest sessions, where these sessions are coming from across the globe, the applications they're accessing, current users or active users, as well as the application types and operating systems. Now, if I wanted to dig into this a little deeper, I could highlight over here and to dig into that quite a bit. Now, I want to jump right into this and talk about really the way this solution works. So if I go down to policy, you'll see I have rules over here. So these are like any access control list that you might have. It works from top to bottom. When a user hits a rule, it'll enact that rule. You can see I have some default ones. I'm going to click New Rule real quick to show you some of the things that we could have. So certainly name and a description. We could certainly make it temporary, but we have some conditions that we could set. So certainly identity, source, whether it be geolocations or IP ranges. Right? We have time ranges, that kind of makes sense, and as well as destinations. So those destinations could be internal applications, SaaS, categories. We'll look at a little more on that as we kind of go through this, whether I'm going to allow users to access this or block that. There's also some profiles that we could wrap around some of the applications that we might want to use as well. So let's talk about a few things here. Let's talk about first. We'll talk about the profiles for the applications real quick. So if I go over here, you'll see I have profiles listed down here. So if I select one of these profiles, we can see some of the settings that are here, but I could click a new profile, and this will be for RDB access, and I could do things, allow access through a web client, allow clipboard, and things like that. All right, we're going to go through and we're going to create a new policy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to rules here, and I'm going to create a new rule, and I'm going to do it really around identity and destination, and we'll kind of expand this out. So let's first talk about identity. All right, so identity, I'll see underneath settings, and you can see I have access IDPs. All right, see, these are users that I could just add within access to be able to allow them access to this environment, right? But if I want to do something a little bit more elaborate, and by the way, you can create groups out of these users as well. You'd kind of expect that. But if I want to do something a little bit more elaborate, I could integrate in with identity providers. You can see the access identity provider is already there, but if I could select a new one over here, you can see I've got a whole suite of solutions as well as good old-fashioned SAML that I can use to be able to provide identity for users in this environment. So I'm just going to use this access identity provider or use the access built-in solution. We also want to look at destinations, and these are going to be destinations that we want our users to go to. And I've created a whole bunch of self-hosted applications listed over here. I think today what I'm going to do is give you access to an ILO interface. Maybe we'll do a remote to desktop here. This is a web server that just counts the number of times that you've accessed the web server. And I also have a AI, everything's about AI these days, so I have an AI application that I'm going to expose as well. So let's start off with this. Now, before I go into this, let's talk about the client that I have. So this client here, if I open this up, we'll do an IP config on this guy. All right, and you can see this guy's got this would be typical of maybe like a guest network, and that's exactly what this guy is connected to. It's connected to a guest network, so this guy can only get out to the internet. He cannot get anywhere else. To kind of prove that a little bit, I suppose we could try to ping some of these resources. So why don't I try to ping this? And you can see that we are timing out on these ping requests, right? All right, we could try another one. Why don't we look at something like, why don't we do the RDP desktop here? So certainly you could see we do not have access to these resources from this machine within this environment. I'm also going to log in as this user inside this environment. So here's the access link that I have. Right. You can see right now I have access to no applications inside this environment. So let's correct that. Let's create the rule. All right, so I'm going to go back up to policy, 2 rules. We're going to add a new rule, and we're going to call this Ingram micro allow. All right, we're going to use the identity. I'm going to say anybody from this group is going to be allowed to access, and certainly the user we logged in is allowed to access. Source, I guess we could do geo ranges. Why don't we do United States? But we could certainly do device posture. We'll do a little bit of that in a little bit. Certainly time range makes sense. Now we'll do destinations. So these will be the applications that we were just looking at. So we'll do, let's see, there's a remote desktops. We'll also do, let's see, we'll do an ILO interface. And then we will do here's the count. That's that web server, just counts how many times we've been there. And then finally we'll do an AI application. And I want to make sure I allow access to this. I'm going to click submit. I haven't applied these changes yet, but again, real quick, we can see there are no applications that are available yet. But if I go over here and then I click commit these changes, right, and I'll go back to the remote desktop now. And in a little bit, we'll see those applications show up. All right, here's those applications. They're made available. Obviously, I've done this demo before. Let's go log into some of these sites. So certainly the internal web server, that counts how many times I've had access to it. All right, and I can get access to that solution. We could do the ILO interface. All right, so I certainly need credentials to log into that. Sometimes I can pass those credentials on through. So here's an RDP desktop that exists. So we'll open that up. And you can see I have access to this desktop. Right, and finally we could launch an AI application. Again, I just wanted to show really the different solutions that we can pass through this. There's nothing really limiting us from having access to these capabilities, and this is just an AI generation tool that'll create new images. So again, really you can pass any type of application that we want, and I only allowed users to the applications that I wish them to have access to. Now let's talk a little bit about this. Now I didn't need to necessarily install anything in this environment. We should also talk about how this happens. This happens through a connector. So if I look under settings, you'll see I have connectors listed here, and there are connector zones. Right, so there are certainly public connector zones, so certainly Access makes available public connectors that exist, all across the globe, and they'll certainly pick the best connector to provide you the best performance. Right, but there are also connectors that I want to deploy inside my environment to give access to applications such as the applications that you've seen me just provide this user, and I've got a couple of them listed here. As a matter of fact, this connector is a virtual machine. We could see that by if I do new connector, we could see the download the LVA here, and I'll be offered to download that. And if we look inside our virtualized environment, my connector is actually this virtual machine here. Right, and I'll scroll down a little bit so you can get a little bit of an idea of how it's configured or the resources it's taking. But this brokers the connection between the client and the resources that are internal, obviously using the cloud as kind of the connection broker in this case. All right, so what's another thing that we can do within this environment? So certainly at this point, even though I have access to these applications, there may be resources I don't want people to access. For example, right, currently I can access Poker King over here. All right, maybe I want to block that. So there's another piece of the solution that you can implement, and that will be the Atmos agent. Right? And I actually have that installed inside this environment. If we look over here, and we can see that I'm not logged in. So let's talk a little bit about posturing and go back over to the console. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this. I'm going to go down to device posture. I'm going to select this setting for device posture. And basically this is just saying I need to have the Atmos agent up and running. So I'm going to click submit. And let's look at a little bit more detail on these postures. So right here is the device postures. There's my one setting right there. We could certainly look at that and gain an understanding. So I'm allowing any Windows operating system, any iOS, as well as any Android. And I just wanted to make this simple, but you could get quite elaborate with this. So if I click create a new one, we'll do Atmos agent. We could give it some type of name, description. Again, we could choose what Mac OS we want to allow. All right, we could choose what Windows OS we might want to allow. Maybe I'll say 10 or higher. All right, but we could go through all these. But there's additional conditions. So we could do firewall. We could do, Windows patches. We can make sure the person has all the Windows patches. We could do antivirus, right? And if all else fails, right, what can we do? We can do a registry entry if we wanted to. All right, so we got a variety way of setting up postures within our environment. All right, let's close. Right now, this hasn't been applied, so remember I made that change within our policy, right, to make sure that they had the Atmos posture used. So let's take a look at that. Let's log back into this environment. Notice how it remembered. I didn't have to remember any of those pieces, but notice the clients that are available or the applications that are available. But watch what happens after I apply these changes. We'll go over to the client. And you can see the applications disappeared because I didn't have the Atmos client up and running. So I'm going to close that out. We're going to log in here. I'm going to click next. You see that we've been successfully logged in. You can see that we're connected. I can close this out, and then again we'll open up the web browser. I'll get connected, and you can see we have access to our applications again. Right, but still at this point, right, I could still get to this site, and maybe I want to block that. So let's do some things wrapped around blocking access to this resource. All right, so I'm going to go back up to rules. Now real quick, if we go down to settings and destinations, I have more than just self-hosted applications. I have SaaS-based applications, right? And I also have categories over here. Right, and if we go down a little bit, we will see gambling is listed as well. Right? I could also put tags on different entities in this interface and use those. Right, but we're going to use the categories. I'm going to block gambling, so let's go over to policies. Right, I'm going to create a new rule. And I'm going to go call it Ingram Micro. Right, and then the conditions. I'm going to do that for all our users here, this group of users. We're going to certainly do the device posture. And then the destination, I could certainly fish that out, but if I want to, I can just start typing gambling and it'll show up. You can see that we're already blocking this. So I'm going to click submit. Go over here, I'm going to commit changes. And then for good measure, what I'm going to do is we're going to pause our client and then resume it. And then we'll go back over here. Open our web browser. Go back into my applications. We can see the applications are available. Right, and you can see we've been denied access to this page. So that's a great way to be able to stop people from going to different resources. And one of the things I'd like to point out is if I pause this now, right, I'll be able to get access to that page again. But if I go over here, you can see my applications have disappeared. All right, so that's some interesting things we can do. Let's try another set of resources. So this is not limited in any way. If I go back down to settings and into destinations, you'll see that I have actually an entire VLAN that I've allowed access to. And if I added this to the rule and I did allow policy, he could ping anything that's on that network. Now I have a file share that we're going to actually look at, right? And again, this client doesn't have access to that file share. So if I do this and I do ping, you can see I don't have access, and that's the IP address of this. All right. So we'll close that out. We'll go up to Management Console. All right, I'm going to give access to this. So I'm going to go to Policy. All right, we'll go to my Allow Policy. I'm going to edit that. I'm going to go down, and then I'm going to add that file share resource. Click Submit. Again, I'm going to commit those changes. We'll make them available. I'll go over the client side. I'm going to renew. I'm going to go down here. And I think I have that file share. I think I've accessed it before. So if I go back here, select this file share, you'll see I have access to these files. Now, what could be the downside for something like this? Well, I could certainly go to Google Drive. And obviously these look like they're pretty important files. I could probably take these and drop them into my Google Drive. So that might be something that I don't want to do. So how would I stop people from doing that? Well, let's take a look. Let's pause this again. Let's go into the Management Console. Go down to Settings. We'll look at Destinations. Right, and I have SaaS-based applications over here. So I have one that allows us to block Google Drive. So that was very easy for me to create. All I did was click New SaaS Application. If I go up there, I can start searching Google. And you see a whole bunch of things show up. I can just actually search Google Drive, and that'll show up itself. Right, and then all I did was give it a name and submitted it, but there's other URL customizations that you can put in. You can include or exclude certain things, and that's really how this guy was created. So let's go and add this to the block list. So I'm going to go up to Policy and then Rules. Here's my block list. Let's edit that. I'm going to go down and we're going to add on our SaaS applications. I'm going to block Google Drive. I'm going to click Submit. All right, and then I'm going to go commit those changes. All right, those changes were applied. All right, go back over here. I'm going to click resume. Open up my File Explorer again. Let's see if I still have access to my share. See, I have access to my share there. Let's open up my web browser and let's try to go to Google Drive. You see I've been blocked access to this. So those are the kind of things you can do with access security. And again, this is a new solution that Aruba has required. It is, again, a true SSE solution, or Security Services Edge solution, that offers all the capabilities that you'd want to protect users with whether they're internal or external in the environment, or whether the applications are internal or external in the environment. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please stay tuned for more videos.